Hey folks, been a while. Flames of War action, free-for-all scenario, 1,500 points aside. I'm using some of my older army lists for the Italy campaign. Of course, I won't be using any of the Italy terrain. Might as well be being fought in France, actually. I got the table set up, it looks like somewhere in France. But regardless, it's going to be U.S. Armored Rifle Company, taken from the Road to Rome book. And going against him will be the 26th Panzer Grenadier, again taken from the Italy books, Fortress Italy in this case. Both sides a confident veteran, which will be interesting. Yeah, we'll see how this works out. Again, free-for-all scenario, and it's kind of a learning scenario for me because I haven't played in a year, so I'm giving myself a chance to get all the rules in order and get back into the flow of Flames of War. So there you go, folks. Stay tuned. I got more little updates coming soon. Everybody, got a little Flames of War action I've been doing this week. Going into turn 3 here. You can see the there's a platoon of American Armored Infantry moving up. They're currently pinned. Preceding the attack, of course, we have my freshly painted Stuart tanks. They're all finished anyway. They're taking up a good lead position there and they're putting out a lot of heavy machine gun fire. Down in these two platoons, Germans, were caught off guard. Initially caught out in the open here, forced to fall back and dig in. And that's their current position here. So that's the situation on this end. Not very good for the Germans. And that is an objective right there. Down here I got a support platoon, 2 mortars, 8 SEMs, and I got an observer in that barn there. He's sitting on top of the heavy machine gun guy. They're both inside that barn. The observer's in the top floor, and he's calling down some fire on these advancing infantry here, which he did quite effectively. Down here we got another objective. Germans are hovering around. They got 3 teams dug in, kind of holding on to that objective. The rest of that platoon is up here in the woods. They're basically split, and there's the platoon commander in there somewhere. There he is, he's in the back. So he's taking the rest of the platoon up into the woods. I don't know what they're going to do. Maybe support the assault on this objective. As you can see, got the Panzer IVs, platoon of them, moving up, putting down some fire on these dug-in Americans. Yeah, it's going to be a tough nut to crack right there. Now, they initially got caught before they were dug in. Took quite a few casualties. They're currently pinned, but they're well ahead of that objective. And got some Shermans supporting the defense. They're in a hull-down position. I don't know if you could see that, but those Shermans are actually able to see over that hill. And one of them still hung up on a hedge there since the start of the game. Unfortunate. Survived a shot from this Tiger tank. A shot in the side, no less. The bullet went clean through the armor of that Sherman. And there's the 2 IC and his M3 half-track. The 1 IC for the Americans. We're here behind this little wood area. Tree, basically, in that Jeep. And that's the situation. Going into turn 3. There's the casualties. Those are the American casualties right there. And those are the German casualties. 3 teams lost in 2 separate platoons for the Germans. Yeah, it's pretty rough for the Germans at the moment. So we'll see what happens as I go into turn 3. We'll see if the Germans can hold on to this objective, slow down the infantry advance. I think those Stuarts are going to get too much closer to these guys. 1 lost here, which is unfortunate. These 2 platoons of Germans don't really have a lot of anti-tank capability. They're MG teams. Their command teams do have Panzerfaust, and I did attach a Panzerschreck team, which was right here. But it was taken out by the Stuarts before it had a chance to do any effective fire. Oh no, right here also I got some US 82nd Airborne, full platoon, mortar and bazooka teams moving up through that wood. So far they're unmolested, no shots taken at them. Not sure what they're going to do. They are in a position to support either attack on this objective or that one down there. And of course the Nebelwerfers put down some relatively ineffective fire on this position over here The infantry's dug in. And like I said, they're going to be very hard to dig out at this point. Okay, folks. See what happens coming up soon. I'll send out another update. Hey, folks. Top of turn 3. Americans just finished their turn. Basically, they put down some more heavy fire from these Stuarts who didn't move. So they used their full rate of fire on the Germans that are dug in over here. They also moved up their armored infantry, which are now in these positions. They managed to put a little bit of fire down on the Germans as well. They're still a little bit distant. Rate of fire is 1. What they did do up here is that a few of the infantry and the Stuarts, and as well as these paratroops, did manage to put some fire down on this barn position, which did house a heavy machine gun on the bottom floor, and the observer team for some mortars behind it. On the top floor, the observer team survived, but the heavy machine gun is gone. As you can see there, it's no longer with us. So that support team was also pinned and lost its heavy machine gun. But I believe they did rally that pinning off. We're at the start of the German turn, so I took care of all that. I also removed the Nebelwerfer smoke trails, which you put on them whenever they fire. Americans also smoked the Tiger tank, which is now in this position, which means the Germans are probably going to want to move that tank, and that'll reduce its rate of fire. And it does have the rapid fire Tiger Ace skill right there, which means its rate of fire is 3 if it remains in place and doesn't move. Unfortunately, it hasn't done so even once yet in the game, so it's only shooting with a rate of fire of 1, just to keep on moving. Outside of that, down there, on the other flank, in the distance, you can see one Panzer IV is still bailed. Failed to make its motivation test, so they're only going to have 4 operational tanks to hit the Americans with. So that's the situation so far. I'm about to go into the movement step for the Germans. See what happens with that, folks. Stay. Not a very effective turn for the Germans. These 2 platoons up here, the only thing they did is nothing, so they're basically completely gone to ground at this point, including this unit inside the building up here. So these 2 platoons are now gone to ground. The one IC for the Germans did move into the barn and is now up there with the observer team. And the point of that is so that he can call in some Nebelwerfer fire on this position up here where the Americans are advancing. That would be preferable at this point. Otherwise, that observer team that is in this barn with him, he can only observe and spot for the mortars back here, which is part of his platoon, basically. At least he came from that platoon. He's an independent team. One thing that did happen over here, if you notice, some of the Panzer IVs began shifting up in this direction. There's one actually right here behind this tree. One of these Panzer IVs is still bailed, of course. They did put some fire down on the enemy positions up here. Totally ineffective against the Shermans, which have cover. That's unfortunate. But the infantry that was up here in the woods also shifted up in this direction. They're now heading towards this smoke area. They managed to put some ineffective fire on this team of 82nd Airborne. Did nothing. So the Germans are shifting their positions here. We'll see how far they go with that. Nebelwerfers also put some fire down and managed to take out 2 teams that were dug in up here, which was good. So those infantry are still pinned. Not a big deal, actually. Down here, the Tiger once again took a shot, this time at the 2 IC inside this M3 half-track. And wouldn't you know it, it was a dud shell. Yeah, he hit all right, but went clean through the armor. I don't know. These guys have rapid fire Tiger Ace, but their ammunition is not doing its job. Rules-wise, they basically failed their firepower test. So that's the situation, folks, going into turn 4 next for the Americans. This smoke will be removed from the table. There'll be some tests for pin-down units for the Americans. All right, that's next, folks. Actually, you know what? That isn't next. They still got to make some stormtrooper moves. You know what? One thing I want to do, since there was no close assault, it means these units can use a stormtrooper move. So that Tiger tank, yeah, I want to move him down that road. So he needs a skill test. He's veteran. He needs a 3+ to do this. And he gets a 4 Which you can see right there. He's going to move ahead 4 inches down that road. Pull my trusty tape measure. So that'll put him right here. And that's where he is. Don't really want to move anything else. Probably these infantry over here. Let me back out a little bit. So they're also going to attempt a skill test. They're veterans, so they need a 3+. That's this platoon basically, which includes these, but I'm not going to move these. And they get a 3, so they're also going to be able to move straight up ahead. And I'll do that right now. So with the platoon commander, I'm going to move up to here. This guy right here is going to move up to there, 4 inches. And these guys right here, I don't want to go too far. I'm going to be in the open. So I'm going to put them right here along there, in that hedge. And this guy's going to move up to this position. Now, these guys down here are part of this platoon, but I don't want to move them. So I have the majority of that platoon up here, which includes the platoon HQ, so I could do this. So basically I'm splitting a platoon. I'm happy with that. And this guy, incidentally, is the 2IC. I don't really want to move anything else, except maybe these Panzer IVs. I'm going to try a test with them. One of them is bailed and won't be able to move. I don't want to go too far. They get a 3+, so yes, they can move as well. So I'm going to shift them up here as well. If I can, 4 inches. He's not going to be hit by anything. Platoon commander as well. He's going to move up to this position. Let's turn my armor that way. Now this tank here, I might pull back. I don't want to get too far away from this tank, so I'm going to shift him here. I'll keep him within 8 inches, which I'm happy with. Alright, so folks, that's it. I have one more tank here that I can also move as part of this platoon, and I'll do so. I'm not afraid. Pretty confident that the Shermans will not hit me. So make sure he's within command distance of 8 inches for veterans. And that looks good. So there you go, folks. That is the situation so far. The Americans are coming up at the start of turn 4. Let's see what happens next. And you get a good look at the 82nd Airborne coming out of the woods. Where are they going? I don't know. Alright, folks. Turn 4, folks. Finished turn 4. Started with the Americans. Let's see what they did here. Yeah, up here they moved the infantry up, and they did actually launch an assault on the Germans finally with their infantry. Unfortunately, the Stuarts repositioned over here on this side. Their fire really wasn't that effective. They didn't manage to pin any of the Germans in place, but the infantry did launch an assault, which was thrown back. So the infantry here are now pinned after being repulsed, thrown back by the infantry. So, yeah. The thing is, though, the Germans up here, they're really down in numbers. I think this platoon right here, there's one team there, and the second team of it is back here. It's got this heavy machine gun in the command. That's all that's left of that platoon, 3 teams. So, unfortunately, that's not too good. But they haven't been forced to make any morale checks yet, so that's that. So, the Americans were repulsed. Down here, we did have a little bit more action as the paratroops finally got into action. Get a better position here so you could see. But yeah, you also see that the paratroops are also pinned at this point. And basically what they did is they come out of the woods. They had a Tiger tank that was up here on the road where the smoke is currently, put down by some Shermans. They did have an opportunity to take out that Tiger tank with a bazooka shot in the flank. It missed, so that was that. The paratroops failed to assault as well. They failed their morale to do so. They just were not up to the task. That Tiger is somewhat menacing, and currently that Tiger is up here and just put down some machine gun fire on these paratroops, which are pinned at the moment. In addition, over here, the Panzer IVs, as you can see, have really changed their position. They were originally down here. But I think they're giving up that position. I'm not sure exactly what they're trying to accomplish at this point, but they have changed to this side of the woods, and they put down some machine gun fire on these advancing paratroops, which helped to pin them. I think 2 teams were lost by the paratroops so far, so they have taken some casualties. But the Panzer IVs are still putting down some fire on the enemy Sherman tanks over there on the hill. These guys are in good shape at the moment. The infantry are dug in. Shermans are still at 5 tanks, full strength yet. They haven't taken any losses, as you can see. They're 2 IC. I don't know if you could see him, but he got out of his half-track. He's right there. He's on foot, making his way down towards the flank over here. See if he can survive that. The German infantry was up in this woods. They also pulled out of there, making their way all the way up to this position here. They're up by the support platoon, which has the mortars. There's the platoon command team right there, and 2 of his other teams with him. And he's got the other 2 teams of that platoon back over here, dug in, basically holding on to that objective. So far, there's nothing threatening them. By the way, that guy right there, that's the spotter team, the observer team for these Nebelwerfers. As you can see, the Nebelwerfers have put down some fire in this direction, called down by their 1IC, failed to range in. So they did aim at these guys up here, these Americans, but failed to range in. So that was that. Yeah, folks, that's the situation. I think the mortars were also called in down here, and 30 Cal team was taken out, the Americans. Again, contributing to their status of being pinned down. So the Americans up here being pinned, being held in check. Same thing with the paratroopers. I don't know what their Germans are doing with this Tiger. Maybe going after this objective. It's over there by the rule book. I don't know. It's undefended. Closest thing to that objective is the 1IC and this mortar team back here. So we'll see if the Germans are going to go for a mad rush on that objective. If they do that, I don't know how the Americans are going to respond to that. Well, the only thing they could do is rush in to try and contest. That'll really throw things up in the air. But then again, the fight up here is pretty close as well. So, okay, folks, we're going to go into turn 5 and see what happens. It's getting interesting. Folks, finished turn 5 for the Americans. Taking a look down here, you can see it's getting kind of bare. The only thing left is the Stuarts and a few German units. Yeah, pretty much that was the highlight of the turn for the Americans. They assaulted down here with their Stuart platoon, didn't take any losses. They managed to force 1 platoon of Panzer Grenadiers to withdraw from the battlefield because of it. Failed the morale check, and they also took the 1IC for the German force with them. So the Germans lost their 1IC. The Americans also assaulted with their infantry. If you remember, we're up in here. Unfortunately, they were not successful either. They were forced to fall back. The assault failed. As a result of that, they were forced to make a platoon morale check from losses, and they failed as well. And they also lost their 1IC. So both sides have lost their 1ICs. 2 ICs are now in charge. The Germans is right there, their 2 IC. And for the Americans, theirs is over here. 2 ICs over there. So those are the commanders of what's left of these forces. And it's still pretty early. Both sides have only lost 1 platoon. They're far from making a company morale test. So that was the situation down here. Americans did take that objective. We'll see if they can hold on to it now. I think the Germans might be able to contest it. They do have some infantry coming up from this other platoon that's located here. On their way up, a little too late to reinforce the defenses, but we'll see if they can retake this objective. They pretty much have to. One interesting thing over here, I have to move, you'll see that the Tiger tank is in a prime position. He's kind of close to these paratroops. You can't double time at the moment, but he is in a position to run over and grab this objective, which is currently undefended. We'll see what happens with that. For the Americans, their Sherman tanks are all on this side of the road. They have to cross 2 rows of hedges if they want to get over there on the side with that Tiger. I'm not sure they want to, actually, because that Tiger is pretty deadly. The Americans still have their paratroopers deployed up here in the woods. They're currently pinned. Panzer IVs are also stretched along this side of the road. Nebelwerfers. We'll see if they do any damage in the German turn. So that's the situation. The Americans are in firm control of their objective up here that the Germans need to take. This one is not in control, and the Americans have just captured this objective here. And finally, the final objective is right there, which the Germans are firmly in control of. I'm not sure they're going to lose that. We shall see. So turn 5 for the Germans is coming up, folks. It is quite interesting, quite decisive on this part of the battlefield. I didn't expect that to happen. Both sides take a beating like that. So, and the Germans, by the way, still have this platoon here, which has only got 3 teams left. Platoon HQ, heavy machine gun, which was attached to that platoon, and this team up here. And that's about it. The only thing left in this building here is they do have a support team observer. They also have the platoon commander for the support platoon, which is basically these 2 mortar teams, and that's it. So the support team is made up of the 2 mortars and their command, the platoon command. The observer, of course, is independent. He's right there. So we'll see what they can muster as far as retaking this objective, which they have to at least contest, and perhaps while doing so can capture this objective up here. We shall see. Free for all, 1,500 points. It's a pretty good game, folks. Stay tuned. All right, folks, finished turn 5 for the Germans. Let's see what happened. Well, looking over here, which is probably a very critical part of the battlefield at the moment. Like I said, those Stuarts just about on top. Well, they are on top of that objective. The Germans, however, they have 2 platoons of troops up here. Panzer Grenadiers. There's 1 platoon right here, made up of 3 teams. They just advanced within 4 inches of that objective. That objective is now considered contested in the upcoming Americans' turn. So the Americans will not win because of that. They also have a 2nd platoon. These 3 units, teams coming up. Those were originally part of this platoon down here. There's 2 more teams down here dug in. They're basically holding their ground for the rest of the platoon. That's what's going on there. You can see that the Panzer IVs are still kind of all over the place at the moment. This guy here was shooting at these dug-in infantry. He had no targets, really. These 2 tanks right here, including the platoon commander, put down fire on the Shermans, and they did manage to take one out, as you can see with that big smoke cloud there. That Sherman is now destroyed. So that's the first tank casualty of the battle, really. Both sides playing it pretty safe when it comes to their tanks. This tank right here, Panzer IV, put down some MG fire on the paratroops. Managed to take one of those bases, one of those teams out. And so they are still pinned. You can also see that the paratroops have also taken some mortar fire. Once again, that support platoon for the Germans is coming in handy, as you can see right there. Those 2 mortar teams put down some fire. Their spotter is up here in that barn, and called down some mortar fire on this position. Helped. Somebody took out a team. It was either this Panzer IV, it was a mortar fire, one or the other, but regardless, that one team is gone. They don't have to make a morale check yet, so they're still good. That's the situation. The Americans' turn is next. They will not win the game, even though they're on top of this objective. They don't control it. It is contested. One very important part right now is this Tiger tank seems to be making its way towards this objective. I don't know if you could see that. If I zoom in a little bit. He's not far away. He's about 8 inches away, actually. So he moves 8 inches. So in one turn, he could get in there. The Americans really have nothing to contest that objective. So they're going to have to take that into account in the next turn. Where they move some of these Stuarts down there. I don't know if they could reach. They'd have to really double time. Or these paratroops up in the woods. I don't know. So actually, this battle looks like it's about to swing. The momentum is about to swing on the side of the Germans. We shall see. It's going to be close, that's for sure. Okay, folks, going to turn 6. Americans are up. Okay, folks, turn 6 is done for the Americans and the Germans. Did them both real quick. Basically, the Americans' Stuart platoon has split itself up, mostly because of this objective, which the Germans, the Tiger's sitting right on top of it, so it's not good. Sherman tanks put some smoke on that Tiger tank. It didn't really matter. The Tiger tank was going to move anyway. But anyway, here's the platoon commander for the Stuarts, leading the rest of his platoon, or at least 2 other tanks, up towards that objective. They're totally ineffective against that Tiger tank, so this will be interesting. I think maybe the goal here is to at least contest that objective with those 3 Stuarts. The rest of the Stuart platoon is up here holding their ground defensively. They're sitting on top of the objective again. It's still contested. Germans moved up some extra infantry. They do have a Panzerfaust command team back here, which couldn't fire because it moved, so maybe it'll fire in the next turn. We'll see. But there is a mix of 2 platoons of Panzer Grenadiers here. This platoon only has 2 teams left and passed its morale test to stay in the fight. So they're sticking around yet. So it's a close one here, folks. Panzer IVs have moved up along the road, as you can see, which is turning out to be interesting. They put down some fire on the 2 Stuarts sitting up here. As you can see, they've taken some fire. The Panzer IVs let loose with some anti-tank gunfire from this tank, and this tank over here coming out of the field. This platoon commander, Panzer IV, put down MG fire on the paratroops. Ineffective. The paratroops, by the way, are no longer pinned, as they were in the previous turn. And finally, down here, the rest of that Panzer IV platoon did take advantage of the positioning of the Shermans, which if we take a look here, they're revealing their side armor. They're basically trying to cross that hedge, which they did effectively, but they didn't get far enough to completely get across it. They won't have to make a test in the next turn to bog. Of course, they're considered over it. It's just that their actual positioning is right there. But they are revealing their side armor. These 2 Panzer IVs took advantage of that. Unfortunately, neither one hit because they had moved. At least one of them did. And that was about it. Nebelwerfers did put down another barrage, this time, over on these guys because there was no other observers. Well, the 2 I see is right here. You can't see what's going on the left flank. And the observer for the Nebelwerfers has been sitting right there on that hill since the beginning of the battle. So we called in some fire down on these Americans. Hunker down. Got to do something with them. Yeah, I don't think we took out any Americans from that. But we did pin them. So that's that. The only other thing of note is that 1 more Sherman has been taken out, as you can see right down here. And I'm not sure if that was from the Tiger or one of these Panzer IVs that I was talking about before. But probably the Panzer IV. Anyway, one of them's taken out, so they're down to 3 tanks at the moment. And that's it. So folks, let's go to turn 7. It's coming up. Got the airborne. They're still in the fight. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams left. They're still in the fight. They are fearless veterans. We'll see what happens in the next turn, folks. Turn 7 is complete for both sides. As you can see, the Stuarts, 3 tanks anyway, the rest of the platoon is still back on the road, moved up, and they have now contested this objective from the Germans. So both sides are treating this as a contested objective. You can see the Tiger got smoked. He did have to move, and he put down some shots on this advancing Shermans up here. Missed. These Shermans also put smoke on him. And of course, the Stuart fire is totally ineffective. In fact, all this tank fire from the Americans will be ineffective against that Tiger unless they can get the Shermans on the side armor. That's about it. And they are advancing some of their paratroops, including Bazooka, up on that Tiger. So the Americans are running. They're trying to rectify this situation before they lose their objective. They're throwing everything at that Tiger. Quite interesting, actually. In the meantime, Germans moved up 3 of their Panzer IVs up on this objective to try and take control of this objective once again. In this case, it's being held by some Panzer Grenadiers and the Stuarts, the rest of the platoon, they're holding their own. They're putting down MG fire on these Panzer Grenadiers. As a matter of fact, they did manage to break a platoon of Panzer Grenadiers that were located right here. They are gone from the battle, so the Germans have lost 2 of their platoons of infantry, but they're not forced to make any company morale tests yet. Still, they're in here. There is the support team's, what is he called? He's the spotter, the observer team. He's in this barn. Also back here is the platoon command of the support team. He can also call down fire from the mortars, which they did. It was ineffective. They put fire down on these paratroops up here, which they can see, and they are concealed. Ineffective. Over here, the Nebelwerfers, of course, if I can move this, did put more fire down on the advancing American infantry. Over here, the Americans have come out of the shelter of their foxholes and are moving up. Perhaps maybe they see a possibility of taking this objective. I don't know. I doubt it. We'll see what comes of that. But they do have 4 or 5 teams of infantry, including a couple bazookas. One's right there, moving up on this woods position, threatening the Panzer IVs that are holding the defense back here. To take a bazooka shot on this Panzer IV, it bounced, no problem. Good German solid armor. So that's the situation in turn 7. Turn 8 is coming up, starting with the Americans. Let's see what they can do, folks. It's getting tight. There's turn 8 for the Americans. You can see all this action going on over here. Americans have moved up further. They got the paratroops within 4 inches. This objective is now thoroughly contested. The Americans have some paratroops as well as the Stuarts. So, yeah, the Germans do not have control of this objective. You can see some smoke there laid by the Shermans, which also came into line here, trying to get on that flank of the Tiger. See what happens with that. See more paratroops in there. The Stuarts up top, they maneuvered a little bit, getting out of the line of sight of these Panzer IVs. This one in particular that's on the road. They pulled back out of there, so they got concealment at least. Took some shots, ineffective. Down here, there was an assault on this Panzer IV coming out of the woods. As you can see right there, there's some American armored infantry. This guy laid down another bazooka shot, bounced. There was another bazooka team up here, as well as this infantry unit and another infantry team. Unfortunately, the Americans did carry through with the assault, but they were gunned down. There was some support fire from this one, which helped take out one of the teams. Yeah, both those teams were cut down, so the assault basically failed. And that's it. And this platoon of Americans is now pinned. So that's the situation down here, folks. We're going into the Germans. Oh, and by the way, this platoon of U.S. infantry did pass their morale test. I think they're at like 6 teams. They got like 9 taken out, so they got to make some platoon morale tests. They passed. They do have a 2IC down here to help out with the motivation tests. And that's about it, folks. Going into the Germans' turn. Let's see what they can do next. 2 objectives are being fought and contested over heavily. Okay, folks. And I should point out one other thing that occurred, and that was down here. The paratroops did attempt a close assault this Panzer IV, the platoon commander of the Panzer IV platoon, and they did get through, but unfortunately cut down with MG fire. Took a risk. There was some troops up in this barn also contributing to the defensive fire in this other Panzer IV. Yeah, they took out that team. It was only one team making the assault that failed. Yeah, the Americans are getting pretty desperate at this point, just throwing themselves at these tanks here and there where they can. Fortunately for them, the MG defensive fire isn't too intense, but nonetheless, they're losing some teams. So there you go, folks. Let's get back to the Germans now. Turn. Okay, folks, here we are. Turn 8 done for the Germans. Let's see what they did. Looking over here, we can see the Panzer IV platoon has moved up into better firing positions on the Stuarts. They missed. Basically, all 3 of these tanks moved, reducing their rate of fire, and the Stuarts are concealed, except from shots from this Panzer IV, which did manage to get around this cover. Unfortunately, they all missed their targets, so the Stuarts lucked out there. This objective is still contested. This infantry unit here, which is now gone to ground, is also part of contesting that objective. Neither side holds it at this point. Of course, we got the support platoon commander there, and right there is their observer. Haven't been very effective. They did attempt a bombardment with the mortars. This position up here, which the observer could see, was ineffective. That was that. Looking over here, we can also see that the German Tiger has backed up a little bit out of the smoke, put down another shot, and missed. In fact, he has not hit or destroyed anything in this game so far. He has a couple bad luck rolls, in fact. So he's not been very effective. He has the rapid fire tank ace ability, which gives him rate of fire 3. Unfortunately, not even once was he able to shoot that many times. He's always been on the move, folks, and that's what you want when you're playing against Germans with a Tiger tank. Keep them Tigers moving. So yeah, that's the situation there. However, this objective is still contested. The paratroops are moving up, the Shermans are moving up, and the Stuarts are also moving up. So this objective is still up in the air. I don't know what's going to happen. Have any success, the Americans do have to get their Shermans on the flank of that Tiger, the side armor, to have any chance of getting past its armor. In addition, they have their paratroops, which basically would either have to hit it with their bazooka, which they have, or close assault it. They do have gammon bombs, so we'll see what happens with that. Down here, the rest of the Panzer IV platoon, I could get focused on those guys down there. Right here and here, they put down some MG fire on the infantry that was up here. They took out a bazooka team, which is good for them. There is no bazookas in the vicinity of these tanks at the moment, which is good. So they're going to hold their position, I think. Not much threat coming from this direction. The Americans do have 2 teams dug in, along with the 2IC, down there by that objective, but I don't think the Germans are in a position to grab it at the moment. They could. We'll see what happens. Another thing that happened is this platoon of Americans was forced to make a platoon morale test for taking a casualty from the fire from these Panzer IVs, and it passed the test. Their 2IC, by the way, is with this platoon at the moment. And that's about it. Naval Verpers, they put down some fire over here. Really not much use. There really isn't many targets, but I tried to take out that platoon commander there, and they failed to do anything. So that's the situation, folks. That's where we're at. It's still up in the air. This is really a back and forth fight at the moment. Another reason I love Flames of War so much. But here we go, folks. We're going to go into turn 9, starting with the Americans. Let's see what they... Okay, American turn 9. Here's what happened so far. So you can see the Stuarts are still in their position. They failed to do any damage to the Panzer IVs or these infantry. They did take some MG fire on them, but nothing got through. In addition, something different. As you can see up here, the rest of that Stuart platoon has moved up to this location. They've abandoned the fight for the objective down here with the Tiger, seeing that it was kind of useless anyway. And they did put some fire on the only target at this point, which was these guys, the support platoon command team, in that barn. Could not hit him, so that was that. He's basically gone to ground and concealed, so he's really hard to hit. So yeah. Down here, on the other hand, this unit right here did not move forward, so he was in a position to actually sneak up and assault this tank. Didn't happen. They failed their tank terror test, so there was no assault here. However, this bazooka team did get up to this position here and put down a side armor shot with its bazooka and took that Panzer IV out in the side. So hurrah for the Americans. So that's one less Panzer IV to deal with. There's still 4 more on the board. And that's about it. The Americans down here didn't do much. They did move up their platoon command, which is behind that big tree. And that's the situation on this side. Of course, here on this side is where it's really important at this point. Americans basically moved up some more of their units. These guys right here are already within 4 inches of the objective. They're fine. They're on the ground at this point. The Tiger, of course, did fall back, and he's got smoke deployed in front of him from the Sherman over here. But these 2 tanks over here, these 2 Shermans, got on a flank position on the Tiger and managed to put down 3 hits on the tank. So one of the shots got through, and the Tiger basically was able to survive. He's bailed out at this point. One Sherman did not get its firepower test, not pass its firepower test. So I got a little confused there. But that's the situation. This tiger is now bailed out. So I'm curious how this is going to play a role in the upcoming turns. The Americans are in a position to retain control of this objective and possibly take the objective up here, although I doubt it. We shall see what happens in the upcoming turns. They got the rest of the Stuarts coming up. So the Germans are next, folks. Let's see what they can do. Folks, German turn 9 complete. Here's the situation. Panzer IVs moved up. They're ready to put down some hurt on those tanks, which they already did. They managed to bail this one out, and they took that one out completely. So, yeah, that's the situation there. No more Stuarts. Of course, that one is only bailed at this point. The rest of the platoon of Stuarts is right there, if you remember. And the Germans are lining up along the road behind the hedges to meet them. So I don't know what good the Stuarts are going to be at this point, unless they can outmaneuver this position. That objective is all but lost for the Americans, so a failed capture there. Let's see, going over here with the Tiger, which is always an interesting spot of this battle. You can see that the Tiger has backed way off at this point. Did manage to survive all those shots, if you remember. It's totally backing off that objective. It's no longer contesting that objective. And if you remember, this is originally controlled by the Americans anyway. So it looks like the Germans have failed in their assault on that objective, at least at this point. So the Tiger has fallen back, and also its fire is still ineffective against the American Shermans. So that's about it. Other than that, put down some Nebelwerfer fire on the infantry up here in the woods that were closing in. Managed to pin them. Did take out another bazooka team that was in those woods. So that's good work by the Nebelwerfers anyway. Those American infantry are still hanging around, though. They once again passed their morale test. And if you look way back there, they still have teams with the 2IC holding on to that objective. So that's that. The mortars, this turn, part of the support platoon, were ineffective. They could not range in on the enemy. And that's the situation, folks. They were trying to put some fire down here on these paratroops. Again, their observer is located here, so he does have a bead on some of those paratroops, as you can see. So that's the situation, folks, going into turn 10, starting with the Americans. Let's see what's going to happen. This is turn 10 for the Americans. Done. You can see there's a lot of little carnage going on down here, some fighting. The Shermans maneuvered, got in a position on the Tiger, got some side armor shots, ineffective. But paratroops, as you can see over here, did manage to get into close assault with the Tiger tank through the smoke, no less. It was pretty back and forth between the tank and the paratroops, but eventually the Tiger decided to break off. And there's its current location. Basically, the Americans have solidified their control of that objective, which was originally under their control to begin with. The paratroops are, let's see, they got 1, 2, 3... 4 stand still on the table, and 4 are off the table, being destroyed. So they don't have to make a morale test for that. Not yet, anyway. Fearless veterans, folks. There they are. So that's what happened down there. Up here is an even bigger tale to tell. There's Stuarts. There's 4 of them left on the battlefield. One of them got destroyed earlier. You can see that little cloud of smoke there. But the other 4 managed to regroup, get themselves in a position, and get on the side armor, those Panzer IVs, put down some heavy fire, and managed to bail and take out a Panzer IV. So one was destroyed, one was bailed. Eventually that caused the morale test for the Panzer IV platoon, and guess what? Yep, they failed it. So that was that. The Panzer IVs had enough. They pulled out of the action. So that's another lost platoon for the Germans. The Germans have lost a total of 3 platoons so far. 2 Panzer Grenadier and 1 Panzer IV platoon. But they don't have to make a company morale check yet. That's about the only good thing so far. That's the situation, folks. Nothing much else going on down here. The Americans retain control of this objective on the left. The Germans retain control up there next to the Nebelwerfers. We'll see what the Germans can do in the next turn. Right now, the Americans have control of their objectives and are on the verge of assaulting this objective again. Up here, the only thing defending that objective at the moment is 2 teams of Panzer Grenadiers, and that's about it. It's going to be an interesting little fight. Those Stuarts might come in and steal the day for the Americans. We shall see, folks. Okay, folks, next turn coming up, Germans. Turn 10. Turn 10 for the Germans. Complete. Boy, what a brutal fight, I'm telling you. Germans dug in the infantry down here. I figure it's the best option they had at this point. One little sneaky thing that occurred was that the platoon command team for the support unit of Germans was able to make a sneak assault on this one Stuart tank. In other words, there was no defensive fire on him. And because of his positioning, there was absolutely no defensive fire on him. So he made contact, but he couldn't get through the armor of that tank, unfortunately. They were back and forth counterattacking, and that was that. He fell back. So I think he's currently behind this tree. So that's that. Stuarts are still in a position. We'll see what they can do in the next turn. Like I said, this objective up here is looking pretty ripe for the picking, but we shall see. One interesting thing that did occur, you can get a good view here, the Tiger tank did manage to put some fire down on those Shermans and took out a Sherman. I believe that Sherman was right here. As you can see that little smoke tuft coming up. So those Shermans, they were down to 2 tanks remaining. They failed their platoon morale test. They decided they had enough, so boom, they're gone. So just like the Panzer IV platoon preceding them, they decided to pull out as well. And all that's left at the moment are these paratroops holding on to this objective down here. We'll see what the Tiger does next. But yeah, one more thing is that the Nebelwerfers did take out the 2IC for the Americans. Imagine that. He was down here hunkered with the other troops. He was not dug in, but didn't matter. He was taken out, so there is no command left for the Americans. This is a brutal fight, folks. That's all I can say. These guys are going at it till the bitter end. There's some mortar team for the paratroops. That's about it. The only effective troops left are probably those paratroops. Germans got a platoon of infantry left, which is pretty much spread across 2 objectives. They got two teams down here and the other 2 up here, one of which is only a command team, submachine gun command team. So that's the situation, folks. We're going into turn 11. Should be really interesting. Let's see what the Americans can do. 11 is complete, folks. That's it. Started off with the Americans. Let's see, they did shift their Stuarts up through this field here. Just slowed them down. There's no bog checks. Same thing here, except this one did have to make a bog check to cross this little area here, which is a hedge. This one didn't make it so far, but it did put some fire down on these Germans there, ineffective. These 3 tanks of Stuarts did put fire down on the support platoon, and it was heavy and it was bloody, and as you'll notice, there is no more Germans located there. They have been defeated. Basically, they shot them all, so they were all destroyed. And that was that. And there was no other real shooting anywhere else on the battlefield, at least for the Americans. They did move up one of their teams here. It was able to shoot at these guys, and it was ineffective. And that was it. Currently, paratroopers are pinned, and so are these infantry way down here by this objective, still pinned. They could not unpin. And that was about it. And start of the Germans' turn. They had only 3 platoons left, and they lost 4. So, time for a check. They made their company morale check, and yep, they failed. That was it, folks. They rolled a 2 on the morale test by the 2IC, which is right there, and they said, you know what, that's enough. This is it. We're done. So they withdrew from the battlefield, and the result was a 4-3 minor victory for the Americans. Somehow they managed to pull out a victory. Minor one, but a victory nonetheless. And they did not take this objective in the end until the Germans eventually broke, in which case they now control the objectives. But they never went after it a second time. They just let the Germans have it. Instead, whenever that went after this German support platoon, wiped him out. So, good move for the Americans. What can I say, folks? That was like one of the better games I've actually played. This Tiger back here. That was a little interesting battle going on back there. He did make the move to take that objective, and at one point did have it, but it was quickly contested by the Stuarts. And I have to say that those Stuart tanks are well worth the points. They are a fabulous unit in this game. I really enjoy them. They're fast, they're mobile, and they can put a lot of firepower down, especially with machine guns. But also they paid their worth against these Panzer IVs. They bailed one and took one out. Some side armor shots. So that eventually led to the Panzer IVs pulling out of the battle. So that was spectacular. Yeah. Hats off to the paratroops as well. They stood their ground for the entirety of the battle. Played a big role back here at securing this objective once again. Kind of an unusual battle. I think it was kind of lopsided in terms of deployment. The Germans were hoping to get to the Sherman tanks over here in this open terrain and have a little tank battle, but that never happened. In fact, the Shermans were deployed up in this area and eventually started shifting this way. Very interesting. They took advantage of this hill, though, and supported the defense here. Nice hold-down positions. I think that really made the Panzers think twice about engaging this objective, defended by infantry and dug in, well, not dug in, but hauled down Shermans. So it was kind of a waste of time. They did, as a result, shift up towards this way, but it cost them the entire platoon in the end. Excuse me. But again, that Tiger was a very interesting thing. I usually use him to snipe, but I don't know. This time I took a little risk with him and took him towards the objective because it was pretty undefended. I think the Americans weren't thinking regarding that. They just threw everything they had down this direction, going after this objective, which they did get to, and was contested for a good portion of the game. But yeah, they left this wide open, and that Tiger lasted the whole battle. He did get back there and grab that objective, but never captured it. Quite an interesting battle. Nebelwerfers, they were okay. I don't know what to say about them. They did take out the 2IC for the Americans, which is interesting. And they had picked up a few casualties here and there. I don't know. For the Germans, I don't know. I think their Tiger did really well. And I think these mortars, actually, this support platoon was also worth its points. They really made a good effort putting down some mortar fire on the advancing Americans up in this area. Really slowed them down. That was good fun right there. But they paid the price in the end. Stuarts, best platoon in the battle, I think. Well worth it. And maybe that's because I just finished painting them. Got them all finished. Up until this point, they've just been half done, really. Didn't have the decals on them or anything. They look pretty good and they served well. So that's that, folks. That's my Flames of War battle report. It's been a while. It's good fun. Pretty much a learning game. Relearning. It's been a year since I played. Love it. Absolutely love it. It's really good fun. If you haven't tried Flames of War, I highly recommend it. It's a good fun game. Good fun game. Alright, folks. Hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned. I'll have more BatReps coming soon. Like, share, leave comments. Let me know if you like this sort of thing. Battle reports, in particular Flames of War. If you have any questions about the game or any of the battle reports I do, let me know. It's all good fun. Till next time, my friends, I'll see you real soon. Take care.